period. X-Wang send off the clowns. Oh God! That one might read the Book of Fate and see the revolution of the times make mountains level, and the continent, weary of solid firmness, melt itself into the sea. King Henry IV, Second Part, Act 3, Scene 1. The response to the Oscar Night Massacre was immediate on the part of both the Hollywood establishment and the United States government. From Washington, D.C. came a televised address to the nation from President Hillary Clinton. The skin of the old woman's face was stretched so taut by repeated plastic surgeries that her translucent cheeks and chin actually gleamed white in the camera lights from the bone beneath, despite the best makeup skillfully applied. Her eyes glistened as well, sparkling with near insanity at these uppity white boys. Her whole manner and address seemed a bit unhinged, a fact not lost on viewers and commentators. The president spent the first 20 minutes delivering a maudlin eulogy of the Jewish victims of this unspeakable act of bloodthirsty and unquenchable hatred. Hillary's grief for the dead of Oscar Night wasn't completely feigned. Many of the dead Jews had been significantly responsible for elevating her to the presidency in exchange for selling her soul to Israel, and the unswerving support of the Hollywood media establishment had been instrumental in keeping her there, especially in beating her impeachment by the House of Representatives, and her subsequent trial in the Senate for allegedly ordering the murder of several of her more vocal political opponents and critics. Hillary concluded by announcing that the patience of the American people with racism and terrorism is at an end, and we are going to crush these evil men like the insects they are. She announced that a new paramilitary force, the Federal Anti-Terrorist Police Organization, would be immediately deployed into the Pacific Northwest, and that they would operate under special rules of engagement that would allow for the complete eradication of terror, and at long last mete out the condign punishment that should long ago have been applied to every manifestation of racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, nativism, and sexism. "You forgot thought crime, bitch," sneered Cat Lockhart. "Oh no, she didn't." "Neat move," commented Hill after the special presidential address had been concluded. "We've known her little army of darkness was on the way for at least a year, but some of the last holdouts of the old way in D.C. were worried about whatever legal or constitutional fig leaf she was going to use to justify creating what is basically her own private militia. This way she avoids having to declare martial law throughout the Northwest, which the United States military has repeatedly told her they cannot possibly enforce while they're scattered all over the globe grabbing oil wells and chasing Muslims and protecting Israel's ass. Not to mention making a mockery of her own professed liberalism for all time. No martial law. Oh no, heaven forbid. She just unleashes her little private army of thugs and killers on the population of an entire region with special rules of engagement. That will give them the power to go berserk and slaughter anyone they suspect of supporting the NVA, or even of thinking unwholesome racial thoughts. Hell, these people have been sidestepping the Constitution and due process for decades, ever since her husband was in power, commented Christina Ekstrom. "I thought they weren't going to bring in those goons until sometime this summer?" asked Lockhart. "That was the original plan, yes," replied Hill with a nod. "We've forced their hand, compelled them to react to us, and that's always good." The surviving members of Tinseltown's Hebrew and homo movie-making elite assembled a huge press conference in the auditorium of 21 Stone Century Fox Studios 4 days after the slaughter. They were obviously shaken and paranoid, seeing NVA assassins behind every bush and under their beds. The conference was surrounded by hundreds of LAPD and private security contractors who were armed and equipped better than most military units fighting in the deserts of the Middle East. It took the press reporters and television crews 5 hours to pass all the security checks to get into the auditorium, as they were searched and x-rayed and their equipment taken to pieces by Kevlar-covered muscle, men bristling with a panoply of automatic weapons, sniffer dog teams, holographic facial profiling computer systems, fingerprint and retinal scanners, metal and chemical detectors, snipers on every elevation and helicopter gunships hovering overhead. The participants at the conference, all Jewish, including 6 studio heads, 6 major producers, and 4 world-renowned directors, were seated at a long table behind a clear screen of special bulletproof plexiglass-type material. An obviously twitchy and nervous Arnold Blaustein, who had taken over paradigm on the demise of Sid Glick, announced the establishment of a special private justice fund by the movie industry, which offered a reward of $5 million per head for information leading to the apprehension alive of any terrorist who could be shown to have participated in the events of Oscar Night in any way, and $10 million dead. Then the conference ended and all of the participants dispersed, surrounded by bodyguards to a variety of undisclosed locations. "Beautiful," commented Randall when he heard of the reward offer. "Now we're going to have every bounty-hunting criminal and scumbag in the world who thinks he's some kind of hotshot coming here trying to track us down, as well as all the cops and FBI and whatnot." "It's a big city," said Hill. "Nonetheless, better to be safe than sorry. I think we need to jump into hyperspace." "What?" "I have a whole second string of safe houses, apartments, and storage facilities lined up for task force director's cut," said Barry Brewer. "The lieutenant means we move everything, just in case someone got careless or some nosy neighbor has gotten curious about the new folks next door. Once we all get settled into our new digs, we go out again and we start taking down individual targets," said Hill firmly. "Remember the first rule of the NVA, gentlemen. They don't hunt us. We hunt them, always. We need to keep on hitting them, keeping them off balance." The task force accomplished the relocation into their new quarters that night, executing the movement in separate vehicles and at staggered intervals. The next day they resumed defensive operations, and any hopes that Hollywood entertained that the Oscar Night Massacre was a once-off and the killers had receded back into the northwest mists was shattered. Australian actor Hugh Lewis, who had made an infamous homosexual western showing cowboys engaging in sodomy out on the lone prairie, was shot down in the checkout line of a fashionable organic fruit and food market in Brentwood. Charlie Randall had asked for and received that assignment, and he carried it out personally, salvaging the national honor of Australia, he called it. That evening, Paramount Pictures' chief financial officer David Rappaport was killed by a single sniper's round as he cavorted in the swimming pool of his Laurel Canyon mansion with two naked starlets, one of whom fled screaming and was cut down on the patio by a second bullet. The second girl had sense enough to hold her breath and dive underwater at the deep end of the pool, coming up for breaths of air at one corner where it was difficult for Lockhart to hit her, because from his firing position on a hill behind the house, the diving board was in the way, so he let her go and beat feet. Oscar Night had stunned and paralyzed the film community, but the screaming headlines and jabbering cable news coverage on the morning after these latest killings started the real panic. Movie stars and B-actors, rappers and rock stars, television personalities and newscasters, studio moguls, directors and producers, screenwriters, executives and attorneys, and all manner of lesser fry began to flee the city. Some of the glitterati created elaborate cover stories about shooting on location or vital assignments elsewhere, feeding these fabrications to the media via their publicists, but most of them just plain cut and ran. Whole entourages fled in helicopters and private jets, in limousines, in airport taxis, in tour buses, and in fleets of private cars. They fled to New York City, to Florida, to posh watering holes in Hawaii and the Caribbean, and to foreign countries. "I wouldn't have believed it," Brewer reported back. "Hollywood has become a ghost town in a week. Most of the major enemy assets on our hit list are gone now, scattered all across hell's creation. You guys may run out of targets." "Oh, they'll be back," said Hill with a shrug. "The Burger Kings can keep the dream machine running by remote control to some degree for a while by phone and email and video conferencing. But almost all their plant and facilities, their sound studios and technical stuff, their money, their whole infrastructure is centered here. Not to mention their homes and their lifestyles and all the luxuries they've grown accustomed to. They'll have to sneak back at least intermittently to mind the store. When they do, we'll be waiting for them." It was true. The NVA was light and mobile. The century-and-a-quarter-old Jewish power structure in Hollywood was not, and given the insatiable demand of the American public for entertainment and the equally insatiable demand of the industry for mega-profits, the dream machine had to keep on functioning and churning out the schmaltz and the sleaze. That meant that somehow, terrified actors and directors and crew had to be enticed into staying on the job. Multi-million-dollar pictures in mid-production couldn't be just dropped. Television series couldn't get by on last year's reruns forever. New episodes had to be made and aired. Variety shows, Reality shows, game shows that were filmed in front of live studio audiences had to continue taping, in itself a security nightmare, since now every audience member had to be given a full security background check and examined from head to toe before he or she took their seat. The producers of these shows got around this by assembling several fully screened audiences of between 200 and 500 people, who were bussed in armored transport from studio to studio, these spectators being paid $200 per show. Since there were often 3 or 4 shows taping per day, some of these professional audience members did quite well for themselves simply by sitting in chairs and laughing and applauding when the teleprompter told them to. One man told a news interviewer, "The NVA is putting my kid through college. We're hitting the bastards hard where it hurts," said Hill, "in their wallets." The LAPD and a massive FBI task force were practically tearing the entire greater Los Angeles area apart, brick by brick, looking for the NVA gunmen. The almost empty streets of the wealthy suburbs where the beautiful people lived, and the movie business suburbs like Hollywood and Burbank and Culver City were crawling with police units and FBI undercover cars, private security patrols by heavily armed contractors, and battered vehicles containing would-be bounty hunters with nothing but a gun and a dream, some of whom ended up in slapstick shootouts with law enforcement teams who mistook them for NVA. But the members of Task Force Director's Cut became adept at disguise and masters of the immediate bug-out at any sign that the police or federals were getting close, while Brewer and Christina Ekstrom made sure they always had some place to bug out to. Ironically, Operation We Are Not Amused had so badly stampeded the Hollywood elite that there was an immediate demand for house sitters, and Barry Brewer was able diffidently to offer a solution. He made a couple of calls. "Tina, darling, hey look, I heard you were going out of town for a while and you need somebody to look after your place in Santa Monica. Look, I've got a couple of my kids, bit players, and what with all this violent racist crap going down and production lots grinding to a halt all over town, they're getting called even less than usual and they can use the shekels, not to mention saving on rent. No, they're professionals, and they really respect your talent and your work. They won't trash the place or throw dope parties or anything like that, I can promise you. Sure, I'll send them over and they can talk to your assistant. Hey, when all this shit is over and things get back to normal, we need to do lunch sometime." The result was that in a number of cases, wealthy Jewish executives and famous movie stars ended up providing room and board in LA, these poshest suburbs, to the very NVA gunmen from whom they were fleeing in terror, and paying them a salary to boot. The hits continued, despite the paucity of targets. NMGM Vice President Izzy Saperstein entered his locked and security-alarmed garage one morning, turned the key in the ignition of his Porsche, and both Jew and Porsche were blown through the garage roof, courtesy of Vincent Pasquarella and his team. Rapper Booga Booga B and 2 of his bodyguards were cut down by automatic weapons fire in front of a trendy Compton nightclub, and a massive car bomb was smuggled onto the DreamWorks Disney back lot and leveled an entire Santa's Village set, totally derailing a major Christmas movie and costing DWD about $40 million in losses. Television director Mort Lerner was found dead on the floor of a private lap dance room in a Laguna Beach strip club with his throat cut. The police could get only a vague description of a young woman with tattoos whom no one remembered seeing around before. Television screenwriter and producer David Wilder was found behind the wheel of his Lexus in a Burlingame parking lot, his skull full of LR hollow points. Foul-mouthed stand-up comic Marta Moskowitz, whose shtick consisted almost entirely of obscenities, references to excrement and snooty flaunting of her Jewish heritage, was found tied with duct tape to a chair in her apartment's kitchen, strangled with a garrote, and a bar of soap jammed into her mouth. On slow days, the crew kept their hand in by doing drive-bys at every studio entrance and office building, and simply shooting any non-white they saw going in or out. These institutions developed severe problems getting their mail, their courier packages, and their pizzas delivered. Their cafeterias shut down and their wastebaskets piled up because the Mexican staff members were too afraid to come to work. And He-Man actor Bruce Willard postured and posed for the media, metaphorically beating his hairy chest, swearing no redneck racist sons of bitches were going to run him out of town. It wasn't a redneck racist who nailed Willard, though. It was a perky little blonde girl dressed as a waitress in his favorite downtown bistro who handed him a menu, gushingly asked for and received the actor's autograph on a napkin, and then fired 3. Special black talon rounds into his chest and a 4th into his skull, leaving Willard lying dead face down in a bowl of gazpacho. Thus did Lieutenant Christina Ekstrom finally make her bones. Within 30 days, the Northwest Volunteer Army had effectively shut down the entire American movie-making industry and over half of the television production. Studio budgets were snapping like sticks, ratings were in the toilet because the whole country was glued 24/7 to the cable news, waiting to see which Hollywood celebrity was next on the hit parade, in a runaway reality show from hell. Las Vegas and Indian casino bookmakers were doing a gold rush business, giving odds on which of the beautiful people would end up on a slab, and when. For the first time in living memory, the major entertainment conglomerates were measuring their monthly incomes in mere millions of dollars instead of billions. Something had to be done. Arnold Blaustein was the first to return to Tinseltown, where in conjunction with his Israeli security specialists, he created what amounted to his own private green zone on the Paradigm Studios lot. It was an office building surrounded by Bremer walls, sandbags, and razor wire, every square inch monitored by CCTV, and patrolled in force by guerrilla-faced contractors with dogs and M16 seconds, commanded by former Israeli army officers. The windows were all replaced by bulletproof and bomb-proof glass. The air conditioning was sealed off from all outside access, via a completely closed circulation system involving oxygen tanks and filters that now took up a whole basement, and there were anti-aircraft guns mounted on the roof that boasted the first-ever BATFE permits for privately owned artillery pieces. Another floor held comfortable if not luxurious living quarters, showers, a sauna, a cafeteria, and a cocktail lounge. Getting this fortress built and operational inside 3 weeks had cost the studio a cool $1 billion and change. Blaustein had signed the checks without a murmur. This monstrosity was called the SOC, Secure Operations Center. Hollywood immediately dubbed it the Bunker, and some daring wits even called it the Führer Bunker. Although after several loose-lipped Paradigm employees were fired for being overheard using the term, it was only whispered. It was this building that became the command post for Hollywood's counterattack against the NVA. The complex contained a plush conference room with a long mahogany table, buffet, and a wet bar. On a day in early May, Blaustein convened a meeting of 24 men, all Jewish. They represented every major studio and television network, the cream of the surviving crop of Hollywood's elite. "We've got to make a deal with the NVA," he told them flatly. The men at the table stared at him. "Arnie, I'm hearing you right on this?" gasped Moshe Feinstein from DreamWorks Disney, his lit cigar falling from his thick lips into his lap unnoticed. "Mine ears aren't playing tricks on me, Boychik. With Nazis we should make a deal, you're telling me? With Nazis? Have you seen your numbers for April, Mo?" asked Blaustein bleakly. "Have you seen all our numbers? We're getting killed out there, in every sense of the word. The Goyishi cop police and the FBI, they know from nothing. They're chasing their tails all over town, and so far they've got a barrel of bupkis. Every day these Yamak Shmoyniks gun down somebody else, our friends, our best creative and money people, our earners, our rainmakers. The people who make this whole industry move. Every day I talk with Kirby, the FBI assistant director they sent out from Washington, and then I talk with the chief of police, then I talk with Homeland Security, and I tell you they got no clue. So we make a deal. It's not like we've never done business with Gonefs before," said Walter Wexler from World Artists, with a tired shrug. "Hell, sometimes we even budget for it. We pay off union bosses. We pay off third-world dictators to film in their countries. And we pay off all kinds of foreign officials to get our movies screened and aired. We want to shoot in New York. We pay off the Verstunked Mafia. We want to shoot in East LA. We pay off the Mexican gangbangers. We want to shoot in Watts. We pay off the Schwarzers. This isn't a matter of paying off some pissant little goy gangster so we can work," raged Feinstein. "These are fucking Nazis. What part about the word Nazis do you not understand, Arnie?" "Arnie, there are practical objections as well," spoke up attorney David Danziger, Paradigm's senior in-house counsel. Danziger prided himself on his metrosexuality, his handball-trim figure, his flawless cap teeth, and his expensive but tasteful suits. He looked more like a movie star than many of Paradigm's actors. "Moshe is right. These aren't criminals. They're fanatical anti-Semites on a mission. They don't want our money. They want our blood. And you know that has historically been the most dangerous time for our people, when we can no longer offer the goyim enough gold or pleasure to buy them off, and we have to start looking around for the exits. We aren't exiting Hollywood, said Sam Glazer from Trevision. No way, not happening. Hollywood is not some god-forsaken shtetl in Poland we can abandon after the Cossacks come riding through. Hollywood is ours, damn their pig-eating souls to hell. We made it. We turned it into the most golden place in the whole Golden Medina, and we're going to keep it always. No, I agree, we can't afford to abandon Hollywood, and I'm not just talking about money. No one is suggesting that, said Danziger. I was simply pointing out that we can't buy the NVA off in the normal way we buy off Gentiles, with money or sex or the illusion of power. The second objection is the question of how would we approach them? How do we find our friendly neighborhood fascist death squad and ask them politely to desist? I have no idea. And what kind of deal do you think we could make with these cannibals, Arnie? Demanded Moshe Feinstein. If they won't take our money, what could we offer them to get them to lay off? I think I can guess, said Blaustein. What I ask myself is what brought this bloodbath on all of a sudden. I think I know. I think that somehow the NVA found out about our two pending projects, Homeland and Great White North. They found out, and this is their answer. Both of those pictures are on indefinite hold now. They have to be, since half of the top people associated with pre-production are dead or in hiding. I think if we made some kind of public announcement to that effect, to let them know we got the message, and we make some sort of oblique promise not to make any really heavy anti-NVA pictures or TV shows, they might get the message in turn and stop slaughtering us. In other words, terrorism works, said Glazer bitterly. Beautiful. Great message. Way to stand on principle there, Arnie. When standing on principle loses my studio $1 billion a month and costs us the lives of dozens of our most bankable talent. And our best executive and production minds, principle can go take a shit in the Pope's hat, said Blaustein flatly. When principle means I can't go home without an armored car and a squad of bodyguards, and I can't sit by my pool after a hard day's work and get a nice relaxing blowjob from some shiksa-fluff who wants a couple of lines in a sitcom. I say principle schminciple. Feinstein had recovered his cigar and now glared at Blaustein. So you think if we grovel to these motherfuckers in public, if we debase ourselves in front of the murderers of Sidney Glick and Lou Woltz and Artie Bernstein, if we issue some kind of public statement that we will be good little sheenies and not say unkind things about these blood-soaked psychopaths who have defiled this most wondrous and shining of all our earthly temples with the blood of God's own chosen people, you say if we do that shtick, they will go loping back to the North Woods and leave us alone? What makes you think the NVA will do anything except laugh at us and keep on killing us? I don't know, admitted Blaustein. All I'm saying is that we all have businesses to run, and we can't run them in the middle of a shooting gallery with us as moving targets. I think it's worth a try, if only we had some way to talk to them, sit down with them, as repugnant as that would be, mused Wexler. We've offered $5 million a head for these swine alive and 10 million dead, and it doesn't seem to have done any good. Maybe we're going at it from the wrong angle. Suppose we offered the $5 million apiece to them? I simply can't believe that much money wouldn't turn the head of even the most rabid anti-Semite. I mean, from what I read, these are guys with black teeth and tattoos who come from dirty trailer parks and work as pump jockeys and burger flippers. Or they did before all those jobs were taken by Mexicans. We should be able to riffle a roll of $100 bills in their ear, and it will be like the voice of God to these schmucks. My guess is that even if we were able to buy off this crew they sent down here for the Oscars, the bosses up in Seattle or Portland would just send down some more, said Danziger. And we have no way to get in touch with them in any case, so the point is moot. Somebody down here knows who the fuck they are and where the fuck they are, said Rafi Itam from MGM darkly. I agree, said Danziger, and I think maybe that's the angle we need to be working on, starting with the interesting question of just how the hell did they know about the 2 Northwest pictures we were planning. The FBI and the police seem to agree that these people are from out of town, the actual gunners anyway. They've identified that sniper Lockhart for sure because he left his calling card, and they've also identified one of the NVA. top assassins as the man who gassed out the security control room at the Kodak, a man known as the Prince of Wands. They've also gone over security videos from the weeks before the Oscars, and they're positive that Jerry Rebs actually took guided tours of the Kodak beforehand, just like typical tourists. Now, that's chutzpah, Walt Wexler reluctantly conceded. Danziger nodded. They think they've identified two more, a man named Wingo and a woman named McGee, whom you may remember had that big shootout at the OK Corral up there in Portland along with Lockhart, the one that was on all the channels and won Cassie Ransom her Pulitzer. The point I am making is that the NVA has sent down their A-team for this operation down here, and they would not have done that and risked their best people without some very serious preliminary intelligence spade work. The cops all agree that there is some kind of spy network of racists here in Hollywood, working with the NVA. How else are they able to track our people so effectively and ambush them at exactly the right moment? Reading Variety in the tabloids and monitoring the internet will tell you just about anything you want to know about anyone in Hollywood, suggested Wexler. Part of the price we pay for being public figures. The NVA's knowledge seems to run a great deal deeper than that, said Danziger. You know how the cops now believe they got away from the Kodak on the night of the massacre? In 2 stolen police cars wearing LAPD uniforms that were obtained from the 21 Stone Century Fox costume department. 2 full sets disappeared at about that time. So how did that come about? And how are these outsiders managing to move around town and hide from the law, in a place where everyone watches everyone else as part of the culture? From maps of the stars' homes they buy from street peddlers on Hollywood and Vine? No, gentlemen, these people have help, inside help, Hollywood help. Some of our own are helping them. The cops are looking for the shooters, without much success. We need to concentrate on looking for the inside men, the traitors to our town and our industry who have brought this horror in among us. And how do we do that? Asked Blaustein. We bring in Marty Schulman, said Danziger decisively. The Hebrew Hammer? Said Blaustein in surprise. He doesn't like that nickname much, said Danziger. He thought it was a stupid movie. Well, it was... Yeah, I forgot, he's your brother-in-law, said Blaustein. Is he really as tough as they say he is? What can I tell you, said Danziger, spreading his hands in the ancient traditional gesture of his people. The man has lived with my sister Carol for almost 15 years. Point taken, said Blaustein with a nod. Okay, so we hire your hotshot brother-in-law to do what exactly? To find out exactly what the fuck happened on Oscar night, who was involved, and I don't mean those werewolves from the tundra up north. I mean, who among our own tame goyim brought the wild ones here? Who betrayed us? Who has dared to lay their filthy paws on the apple of God's eye? We find that out, then we figure out how to use that knowledge. Not to make a deal with these murderers, but to destroy them. If Marty can do that for us, you know that money will be no object, said Blaustein, warming to the idea. You haven't gotten his bill yet, warned Danziger. Licensed private investigator Martin Schulman actually did dislike being referred to as the Hebrew Hammer, since it really was an exceptionally stupid movie even by Hollywood standards. The nickname had stuck, though, and so whenever he was asked about it, he replied, "It means I'm the Hebrew Mike Hammer." In the looks department, he wasn't, not by a long shot. Schulman was 41, short, fat, bald, hairy as an ape, and possessed of a round, fleshy Jewish camel face and nose that looked like some German Nazi caricature from the 1930s. Marty's jowls were always blue, no matter how close he shaved, and he always reeked of stale cologne and sweat. He dressed like a slob in a dusty sports jacket, a frayed tie that was always loosened around an unbuttoned collar, scuffed shoes, and a soup-stained shirt. He invariably had the biggest cheap cigar he could find protruding from one corner of his wide, veal-colored lips. He looked like a bookie, or the sleaziest used car salesman imaginable. Nonetheless, Marty Schulman was smart, and more importantly in Hollywood, he was cunning. He was tough, he was completely without conscience, and he was very good at what he did, which was to take care of problems for the cinematic kosher mafia that ran Tinseltown. That was how he described himself on his business cards, rather than as a PI Martin Schulman, problem resolution consultant. Many times he had sat in the office of Sid Glick or Lou Woltz or some other mogul, or in the palatial home of some well-known actor or actress, and said to the client, "Sid, it's like this. I don't do divorce work or background checks or surveillance or inventory control or anything like that. You don't hire me to follow somebody around like a schnook and see who they're shopping. You don't hire me to catch somebody dipping their fingers in the till. You don't hire me to find out what other studios are offering your directors and your talent or what scripts they're plumping. None of that crap. I solve problems. You tell me what your problem is, you tell me who your problem is, and I make that problem go away. When the problem is over, I tell you how much, you pay me without question, and how it was done you don't ask. Not ever. Marty Shulman knew everybody in Hollywood who counted, and many of those who didn't. He had a stable of paid informants in every studio, every city government office, every chic restaurant, every bistro, every hotel and no-tell motel, every hospital and doctor's office, every security company, every private gym and rehab center in Southern California. It was a private intelligence operation that put the FBI's snitch networks to shame, not to mention the fact that he had half the LAPD and LA County Sheriff's Department on his pad, plus the county coroner for good measure. Shulman knew who was taking the bribes, the backhanders and the sweeteners from whom, for what, and for how much. He knew where all Hollywood's bodies were buried, in some cases literally. He knew who was addicted to what drugs and all the stupid things they'd done under the influence. He knew who was straight, who was gay, who was bi, and who liked animals and dead bodies. His intricate system of unofficial wiretaps and electronic surveillance rivaled that of the Department of Homeland Security. In a secret storage locker, he kept long rows of filing cabinets containing not only paper files, but thousands of cassette tapes, CDs, DVDs, and videos of illegally obtained information obtained from his private spying activities that provided him with a blackmail income equal to that on the returns he filed with the IRS every year. This hoard of dirt on the whole town's denizens had acquired mythical proportions on the gossip grapevine, and a large segment of Hollywood's elite lived in terror that Marty's tapes and videos and transcripts of every secret sin would somehow be made public. Shulman's specialty was making inconvenient people disappear. The stalker, the blackmailer, the drug dealer who refused to cut a bankable talent off their supply so they could clean up for a shooting schedule, or who was selling the talent bad, shit and causing embarrassing ODs. The union shop steward who got greedy or stupid and wouldn't stay on the studio's pad. The shiksa starlet or wannabe starlet from a weekend party who couldn't seem to distinguish between passionate, love-making and rape, and who was raising a stink and wasting police time with her complaints. Stage mothers who were interfering with the development of promising child stars and asking too many financial questions. Ex-wives who were entirely too familiar with California's community property laws and divorce settlements. Ambulance-chasing attorneys who chased the wrong ambulance and threatened to embarrass. The glitterati or the power men. Freelance journalists who thought they could make a name for themselves by digging up skeletons. And airing the dirty laundry of the patriarchs of Israel. Paparazzi who took embarrassing photographs of people and events where no photographs were wanted, security guards and secretaries who saw or heard something they shouldn't have. Shulman took care of a whole gamut of people who threatened to gum up the works or annoy the potentates of the mighty Hollywood dream machine. Marty prided himself on his creativity in arranging for such people to vanish. He used outright assassination only as a last resort because he understood the dangers of unforeseen blowback. Besides, he considered murder to be sloppy and inartistic, the province of stupid goy gangsters and hoodlums. Jews were always much more clever about such things, he thought, always displaying more creativity and panache. Sometimes simple cash was enough to persuade some paparazzi to relocate to New York, or some would-be actress to go home to Indiana or wherever. When shekels wouldn't serve, blackmail often did the trick. This being Hollywood, everybody had skeletons in their closet, and Shulman was tireless in ferreting out secrets and using them to leverage others into cooperating. Then there was the carefully orchestrated frame-up, or the LSD slipped into a target's drink. Shulman's targets often vanished into prisons and mental institutions and heavily fortified rehab centers that were in effect private jails maintained by the studios. Sometimes a thorough and bloody beating administered by some of Shulman's special contractors in some discreet back alley or parking garage sufficed to get the message through, although when it came down to it, Marty himself was never shy about rolling up his sleeves and getting his hands wet. His favorite instrument of correction for uppity goyim was a blood-stained crowbar he carried in the trunk of his Lincoln Town car, the one with the Israeli flag on the rear windshield, the Jew canoe sticker on the front bumper, and the "Kiss Me, I'm Jewish" sticker plastered on the trunk. Marty Schulman's heart had swelled with pride and anticipation when he was called into the bunker, and he was given the assignment by the top men in the industry to find and break the NVA's operational network in Hollywood. This would be his greatest case ever. He had impressed the surviving studio bosses and execs by agreeing to do the job for free, purely out of Ahavat Yisrael, for love of the Jewish people. Marty knew, and so did they, that he'd be able to turn his success into megabucks without them paying him a dime directly. After it was over, the book deal alone should net him a couple of million. Plus the job came with a bottomless expense account he could fiddle for all it was worth. "Just one thing I am asking," he said at the end of the interview. "When you come to make the movie of this, my greatest exploit, I should play myself." A bemused Blaustein had agreed. Schulman was in seventh heaven. He had lived all his life around movie stars, and now at long last he would get a chance to be one. Schulman was given his own office in the bunker, a nice corner one with carpet and a mahogany desk and a secretary, but he took one look and turned it down. No, he said to his brother-in-law, Dave Danziger, this is serious business. I need a place to work, not schmooze. Instead, he took over a cubbyhole in the basement next to the roaring air conditioning system that he fitted out with 2 metal desks, a folding table, and some creaky old swivel chairs he found stacked in a storeroom, as well as several battered filing cabinets. On one desk he installed a state-of-the-art computer system with high-speed wireless and satellite connections. In the drawer of the other desk he plunked a bottle of Jack Daniels and his automatic. He always kept both in any desk he used. They fitted with his Raymond Chandler, Philip Marlowe-esque self-image. He had even kept his own public office in a seedy part of downtown, with his name on a frosted glass door. It had taken him months to find a place that had a garish neon sign flashing outside the second-floor window at night to create the true private dick ambience. His Hollywood clientele ate it up. Dave Danziger was to act as liaison with the bosses and make sure he had everything he needed. He came to see Marty on the morning after he moved into the basement. "I give you an office down the hall from my own, and you choose this dump instead?" he asked, looking around the shabby room. "This is where I shall sit like Buddha in contemplation, and prove for all time that Jewish brain is greater than Nazi brawn," said Schulman with an expansive gesture. "You got what I asked for from the G-men?" Danziger opened his briefcase and pulled out a huge accordion file so thick he could barely grasp it with one hand. "Our boy chick at the FBI assures me that this is all the essential stuff. Everything they've found out that they think might mean anything. If you see a reference to something in there that's not in that file, some document or witness statement or something, let me know and I'll get it for you. What else do you need? Right now I need for you to make like an amoeba and split. I am going to sit down and read everything in this file, then I am going to think about it. When I am through thinking about it, be it today or tomorrow or next week, I will come upstairs and see you." Schulman was a quick reader, and he had a nearly photographic memory. As soon as Dave left, he poured himself a huge mug of black coffee from a pot in the corner, added a generous belt of Jack Daniels, sat down and opened the purloined FBI folder. By 4 o'clock that afternoon he was back up in Danziger's office, and he handed the huge file back to him. "You can take this back before it gets our friend in trouble. I got it all in my Kopf. I made some notes and a couple of copies," said Schulman, seating himself across from Danziger's polished desk. "So how the hell did the bastards pull this horror show off?" asked Danziger. "It's obvious," said Schulman with a shrug. "We know they escaped through the trap door. The CCTV footage shows that, so they must have come in the same way. They came from the Hotel Royale and they had a key card. Their inside man in the theater was this Centurion Security Sergeant Farrell, who disappeared before anyone could catch up to him and question him. He was also the putz who started the big sims up at the front entrance that lured the chief of security out of the control room just at the very moment they got hit with the tear gas. That was no coincidence, all very meticulous and well planned. You can tell that some of these people are military veterans." "Yes, we know all this. The FBI already figured it out," said Danziger impatiently. "They're not complete idiots, you know. We also know the terrorists fled the scene in 2 stolen LAPD police cruisers, 2 of them wearing coppers' outfits stolen from one of our own studios, and at least one of them entered the Royale's security control room, killed the guard on duty, and took the security surveillance system's hard drive, presumably because it would have revealed their activities in the hotel. Farrell's crummy apartment was ripped to pieces, and everyone he ever knew even slightly has been pulled in and interrogated. Every place in town where he ever had a beer or bought a grocery item or a gallon of gas has been tracked down from his credit and his store cards. Every library book he ever read has been gone over. All his relatives all over the country are being watched and their phones tapped, and he is now the subject of a worldwide terrorist APB. Farrell's our only link to the killers. No, he's not our only link, corrected Schulman. Forget about the guard. He's probably up in some shithole in Idaho right now wiring bombs to a moose or whatever. They had at least one more inside man. That's the one we need to find. How do you know there's any such person? Asked Danziger. I deduce him. I sense his presence. He is a disturbance in the force and I feel him. A couple questions I am asking myself, said Schulman, waving his hands about like palm trees in a breeze. The question of entry. Where did the shooters get the key card or cards they used to come in through the trap door? From the traitor guard sergeant, of course, said Danziger. Marvin Hagerman swears that's impossible. He had the Kodak management's key card, the only one, on his own person all the time or else locked up in the control room arms cabinet, which Farrell had no access to. Plus it would have triggered alarm if anyone had gotten into the cabinet and removed the card from its slot. Let's assume he's telling the truth, and the NVA didn't get the card from Farrell. Where then? The Hotel Royale management have the only other cards. Tomorrow I go down and do some schmoozing at the Royale, maybe slap the maitre d' and a bellhop or 2 around, and I bet my ass I'll learn that copies of that key card were going for $100 a pop to all kinds of people that night, and there was more than one unauthorized copy floating around. The trapdoor is the worst kept secret in town, and all manner of naughty munchkins might have had reasons of work or play to want to get in and out of the ceremonies on the QT. Second question. Why did the terrorists take the hotel security hard drive? So they wouldn't be recognized when they were caught on video entering the hotel, said Danziger. You need to understand these people's minds, David. I can see why they wouldn't want to be recognized on entering the hotel before they made their attack. True, but afterward, they don't give a shit. They want the whole world to know who did this. They're proud of it. They've claimed credit for it, and they even left their fucking calling cards on the scene along with all the dead bodies. So why take the hard drive if not to protect someone's identity who isn't so eager to be known? How did they enter the hotel with all their gear? Asked Schulman. They should walk in the front door wearing their masks and holding their machine guns? No, obviously not. They must have slipped in somehow without their masks, said Danziger. They must have snuck their weapons and disguises and whatnot in separately. My guess, they walked right in the fucking front door, and they already had their weapons and gear and maybe that key card already waiting for them. That means they must have brought the stuff in much earlier, because from a couple of hours before the ceremony started, the Royale was part of the LAPD security zone, never mind all the rent-a-cops and hotel employees all over. Yet no one reported any suspicious groups of people entering the building. So how did they get all the weapons and explosives in? In suitcases or trunks something? Speculated Danziger. Most likely, yes. So why does someone bring suitcases or trunks into a hotel? Asked Schulman rhetorically. When you're checking in, said Danziger with a frown. Gewalt, Marty, I see what you're getting at. That would mean... Schulman nodded. It would mean that rather than try to slip a commando team and an arsenal of weapons into the Hotel Royale during the ceremonies, the shooters entered the Hotel A, lot earlier than the cops thought at first, the day before even, maybe earlier. I think they were already inside the building when the security cordon went up, hiding in one of the rooms. But the police and the FBI have identified and interviewed every single person who is a registered guest at the Royale, not to mention all of the staff, said Danziger. They all checked out as being exactly who they said they were, and they all had a plausible explanation as to why they were there. Exactly, said Schulman. One of those registered guests was the second inside man. Now I am going to find him, or her. In a Brentwood townhouse, a grim group of Northwest volunteers sat or stood in front of a large plasma screen TV. They were watching the first columns of FATPO, the federal anti-terrorist police organization, rolling into Portland, headed for their newly constructed fortified green zone in North Portland. The fatties, as they were already being called in the NVA and throughout the Northwest, were riding in armored trucks escorted by Stryker and Bradley fighting vehicles bristling with weaponry, painted a deep blue so dark as to look almost black. The men were swathed in body armor, helmets, and goggles. No faces could be seen, although it was known that the new force was predominantly black and Hispanic. "Smart place they picked for their base of operations," commented Cat Lockhart. "Right in the middle of Nigger Town. Any whites who go in there to scout the place or hit 'em on the street will stand out like a statue." The commentary says there have already been some terrorist contacts in Portland, whatever that means, and however far we can trust anything they say, said Christina Ekstrom. "They may be making it up. You can never tell with anything you see in the American media." Lieutenant Wayne Hill scowled at the TV. "Their orders are to provoke incidents with the local people if they can't lure us out to take pot shots at them, then to shoot first and ask questions later. They call it establishing a dynamic and proactive community presence, otherwise known as letting the peasantry know who's boss." "Damn, I wish we were back home now," said Lockhart with a sigh. Hill shook his head. "It may be that part of their plan, one reason Hillary committed them early, is to try and raise such hell in the homeland that we pull our task force out of Los Angeles to fight these new goon squads back home, and thus relieve pressure on Hollywood," he told them. "We need to redouble our efforts here to cripple the Dream Machine and prevent the enemy from using it to prop up his regime and spread propaganda. That's more important than ever now, since we don't want the media and the entertainment industry making Chuck Norris-style action heroes out of these criminal and unconstitutional gun thugs. We have to bear in mind that in Hollywood, Zog has a weapon far more potent than anything those goons are toting. Since our major human targets have been depleted somewhat, we'll be making more use of Pasquarella and his team, building more car bombs to physically destroy their plant, their sets, their equipment. Remember, in a colonial war the generals never surrender, the accountants do, and we are going to drive Hollywood's accountants into despair as we trash more and more of their toys and run up their bills sky high." "Sir, you told us once that we've known these sons of bitches are coming for over a year now," said Lockhart. "Not asking for any confidential information, but how will the Army be dealing with this?" "The first effect this will have is to increase significantly the manpower available to Zog for search and destroy, house-to-house searches, security checkpoints, neighborhood lockdowns, so forth and so on," said Hill. "Out in the countryside where guys like Zach Hatfield operate, that won't be too much of a factor. The Pacific Northwest is a mighty big place, and even throwing an extra 50,000 men into the mix isn't going to cover that huge territory too much more effectively than with what Zog has in there already by way of police and regular military. Where it will affect us most is in the densely populated urban areas like Portland, Seattle, and the Puget Sound Metroplex, Spokane, a few smaller cities like Boise and Eugene and so on. It will mean they can concentrate more firepower more quickly when there is a tickle. The greater Seattle area is huge, and I think it might not be quite so bad there. But Portland is comparatively much smaller and much more densely populated, and we will be more seriously affected. Remember the famous surge of 2007, when Bush II and his little Jewish neocons friends tried to secure Baghdad with an influx of troops? It didn't work then, but the sea hag doesn't seem to have learned anything from Jug-Ear's mistakes. That's what this FATPO thing is all about, basically securing the cities and reducing the level of violence at least to a manageable level, and keeping the federal control from breaking down completely, as it already has done over vast stretches of countryside. In theory, once they get the cities secured, they can try moving in on smaller towns like Zach and Astoria. I'll be interested to see how that plays out. "So how are we going to counter this, sir?" asked Christina. "Same way the Iraqis did in 2007, Hill told them. He who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. We're evacuating the central Portland area, re-establishing ourselves in a necklace of safe houses and ops centers around the periphery of the greater Portland area, the far suburbs and out in the rural counties, and we'll be striking inward and attempting to lure them out into ambushes. They may successfully reduce the level of revolutionary violence in the city itself, for a time, but overall their own casualty levels will rise, since we now have more targets to shoot at. The whole secret to successful guerrilla warfare, the key to defeating a numerically and logistically more powerful enemy, is to pick your pressure points. And make sure that in every small action you outgun them at that point, even if overall you're outnumbered 20-1. They're trying to change that equation, and now more than ever, our watchword has to be don't let them surround us, trap us in some house or building or small enclosed area where they can bring their superior numbers and firepower to bear. We have to stay light, stay mobile, never let ourselves be trapped, and above all we have to hit. Ideally, no one should ever turn on the television in the Northwest and see what the fatties and the cops are doing. People need to see what the NVA is doing. We need to do our bit, and make sure they have something besides drunk and stupid celebrities to watch on Showbiz tonight. What's the latest on our own security sitch, sir? Asked Lockhart. We've been busy planting fake trails, calling in fake leads to the tip lines and whatnot to waste their time and run them in circles, and that's helped a lot, said Hill. Now Ripley tells me that the FBI has gotten tired of working hard, and they're going to try working smart, as they see it. They finally seem to have understood that we must have some kind of local assistance to be able to conceal ourselves and move around effectively in Los Angeles, and so they're digging like hell into all of their old intelligence files and rattling the cages of anybody who has even the remotest connection with the Pacific Northwest, which is going to be yet another monumental waste of their time and effort, not to mention upsetting and alienating a lot of perfectly loyal Americans who won't be so loyal after getting rousted by our friends in the silk suits. Hill didn't know it, but at that moment just such a person was finding that her life had suddenly turned to excrement because of a completely innocent connection with the Northwest. 31-year-old Julia Lear, an up-and-coming assistant television producer at Fox Entertainment's Los Angeles studio, came in to work that morning to find her KO workers falling silent in the elevator and staring at her as she entered the admin area. Julia, tall and slim and poised in her usual flawless business suit, went into the break room to put her fully organic lunch in the refrigerator and was puzzled when the employees sitting at the table sipping coffee and munching bagels rose silently and left the room. She walked down the hall to her own office and said to her Asian secretary, "Lynn, is my deodorant not working this morning? The weirdest thing just happened." Then she caught the Oriental girl's angry glare. Lynn pointed at Julia's office, where she found two hard-eyed FBI agents, one black and one white, calmly going through her desk and riffling through her appointment book. "What the hell are you doing?" she shouted in astonishment. The agents looked up, reached into their pockets, and flipped their badges and IDs. "I'm Agent Redfern," the white guy told her. "This is Agent Webb. We're with the FBI. Here's how it's going to work, Miss Lear. You're going to sit down and you're going to answer every single question we ask of you, immediately and fully, and you are not going to give us one single syllable of crap or attitude. We are investigating one of the worst acts of mass murder and terrorism in this country's history, and we will accept nothing less than your complete cooperation minus any noise, minus any evasion, minus any deceit. Neither will your employers. We have already spoken with your boss, Myron Silverstein, about you. At the end of our conversation, we will decide whether or not you come downtown with us to talk to a very unsympathetic lady with a set of needles, and Mr. Silverstein will decide whether or not you still have a job." Redfern sat down behind Julia's own desk, and the black agent Webb closed the door. Redfern pointed to the chair in front of the desk. "Sit down." Julia was stunned. "But I don't understand." "Oh, sit down," roared Redfern. Webb grabbed her shoulders, shoved her down into the chair, and quickly lashed both her hands to the arms of the chair with plastic handcuff ties he pulled from his pocket. "What are you doing?" Julia shouted. "You can't do this. You have no right." From behind her, Webb took hold of both her earrings, twisted her lobes, and pulled hard, tearing the rings out of her pierced ears. Julia shrieked at the sudden pain and stared in horror as Redfern leaned forward and spoke quietly. "Don't even think about trying to tell us again what we have the right to do and what we don't, Miss Lear. I don't know where you have been for the last few years, but we have both the legal and the moral right to do whatever the fuck we want, to you or to anybody else in pursuit of these terrorist murderers who are trying to destroy our freedom and our American way of life. Now, I will ask the questions and you will answer them. If I don't like what I hear, you're coming with us, and not only do you get to tell your lies to the needle lady, but tonight in the holding cell you will be introduced to a whole new diverse and multicultural sexual lifestyle. And when the men are through, we'll throw you in the women's bullpen for yet more total immersion in America's gorgeous mosaic. They got some big black mamas and some hot Latina ladies in there who want to rock your world. Do you understand me? Now, how well do you know one Zachary Ellison Hatfield, and when did you speak with him last? Son of a bitch, sobbed Julia. My brother is a cop. He's the sheriff in Clatsop County, Oregon, and if you hurt me, he'll come down here and he'll... Webb leaned over and applied. The tangs of a taser set low power to the nape of Julia's neck, and for several seconds she screamed in agony until Redfern impatiently signaled for the black man to stop. She has to be able to hear the question and answer, he said. Julia shivered in the chair. Her head hung low, the blood from her torn ears dripping down both sides of her neck and onto her collar and blouse. Zach Hatfield, said Redfern coldly. Zach Hatfield. Now, Ms. Lear. I haven't seen or spoken with Zach Hatfield in years, said Julia sullenly, still unable to believe this was happening when not 10 minutes before she had been on her way up the elevator to a day of meetings and script work and a lunch date with a director. What about him? You know what about him, said Redfern coldly. You know what he's been doing for the past 2.5 years? Yes, I know, said Julia. He's with the NVA now. That's what this is about? You're torturing me because of someone I knew 14 years ago? You lay down with a dog. Maybe you got up with some racist fleas, said Webb from behind her, his voice low and mean. That brother of yours doesn't seem to be doing a very good job of catching him, said Redfern. Perhaps we're talking to the wrong Lear, but you're the only one who's down here in the same city where a mass murder took place on nationwide television, so we're starting with you. What is your relationship with Zachary Ellison Hatfield? I dated him in high school back in Astoria, then he was drafted and I went on to college, Julia told them. That's it. I really truly don't remember when the last time I spoke to him was. I don't get home that much. It went on for over an hour, on and on, the same questions. When had she last met or spoken with Zach? When had she last spoken with her brother, Sheriff Ted Lear? When had she last been back to Astoria or anywhere in the Northwest? Who else from Astoria did she know who was in the NVA or who might harbor racist sympathies? Who did she know in Los Angeles who was from the Northwest? They shoved pictures of people she had never seen before under her nose and demanded when she had met them last. They wanted to know where she'd been on Oscar night, every minute of her time, which was a bad point since she'd been at home alone watching the ceremonies on television. She tried to tell them that she had been genuinely shocked and horrified at the slaughter, that she was not a racist, that she had no sympathy with the NVA, whom she genuinely considered to be murderers and madmen. They simply kept on pounding her with questions, shouting at her, abusing and threatening her. Webb hit her in the side of the head when her answers were slow, and tased her once again, just for good measure. Once he came around the chair and spit on her. Julia knew that the whole floor must be able to hear her screams and pleas for mercy and the shouting and bullying of the FBI men. No one came to help her. Then abruptly Redfern looked up at Webb and said in disgust, "Shit, she doesn't know anything. Let's wrap it." He got up from behind the desk. Webb opened the door, and without another word the pair of them walked out of the office. Frightened eyes stared at the two FBI men from the over-the-tops of cubicles as they stopped by the elevator. Webb punched the button and pulled a notebook out of his pocket, making a couple of notations. "Who's next on the list?" asked Redfern conversationally. The elevator door opened with a ding, the two agents stepped inside, and the door closed. The floor was quiet except for Julia's muffled sobs coming from the open door of her office. No one went into the office. A few minutes later, a uniformed security guard, a middle-aged white man, appeared from the hallway and walked down to the office door. He looked inside and quietly went over to the woman in the chair. He took a pocket knife out and cut the plastic ties that bound her and helped her to her feet. "I'm going to take you to the ladies' room, Ms. Lear," he said gently. "I'll let you get cleaned up a little. Then I have to get all your keys and swipe cards and your employee ID from you, and make sure you get any personal items out of your office. I'll get a box for you to put your stuff in. Mr. Silverstein says you're terminated effective immediately, and I have to walk you out of the building. He also said to tell you don't bother applying for any more jobs in Los Angeles or anywhere in show business. He said some other things about you that I won't repeat. I am so sorry, ma'am. I always liked you. We all did." "You didn't like me enough to help me," Julia sobbed bitterly. You heard what they were doing to me in there. All of you heard, she screamed into the line of cubicles. Why didn't any of you lift one fucking finger to help me? She shouted. Why don't white people ever help other white people? Asked the guard with a sigh. Because they were afraid. You know that. We're all afraid. Not all, whispered Julia with a sniffle as she opened the door of the ladies' room.
I know one white man who isn't afraid.
23rd. Into the lion's den. Take thy fortune, thou find'st to be too busy, is some danger. Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 4. Once he had decided that the NVA's inside man in the Hotel Royale was most likely someone with a room that the hit team could hide in, Marty Schulman's approach was methodical and thorough. He went down the list of every registered guest who had been in the Royale on Oscar night and looked at them from every angle until he felt he could cross them off the list. He tracked each one down and talked to them personally, with varying degrees of politeness and couth according to their respective rungs on the Hollywood ladder. This took him 2 weeks of legwork. In some cases, Schulman had to fly across the continent and even to Europe to catch up with a former guest on his list. First class, of course, given his bottomless expense account. There were tourists, legitimate business travelers, journalists and media people from out of town who were covering the Academy Awards,